Here's something that would have seemed impossible just 12 months ago. OpenAI just announced they're building their own AI chip, and they're calling it Jalapeño. Not a cute name you'd expect, but that's exactly the point. It's a full-frontal weapon aimed squarely at Nvidia's stranglehold on the AI hardware market. For years, training cutting-edge AI models like GPT-4o required buying Nvidia GPUs at astronomical prices, thousands of them. An H100 alone costs between $40,000 and $50,000, and training a single model requires hundreds. That's not a constraint, that's blackmail with a smile. OpenAI's move isn't just about cutting costs. It's a calculated chess move that signals something far more profound. The era of AI vendors being held hostage by hardware monopolies is ending. This chip could fundamentally redefine how companies build and deploy AI. Who controls the supply chain and where the real power sits in this industry? It's part of a broader wave. Meta, Google, and Tesla are all building custom silicon. But OpenAI's entry is the loudest public warning yet that Nvidia's long reign is loosening. And here's where it gets interesting. This decision will ripple through every AI company on Earth. Nvidia's dominance didn't happen by accident. It was built brick by brick over 20 years. The company started making graphics chips for gaming, and then someone realized those same chips were incredibly good at doing the mathematical heavy lifting that AI training requires. Suddenly, Nvidia owned the only game in town. By the time AI exploded around 2023, Nvidia had already locked in the market. Their H100 GPU became the gold standard. If you wanted to train a modern AI model, you needed H100s. There was no real alternative. This gave Nvidia a power no other company has in tech. They set the prices, companies paid them, and there was nothing anyone could do about it. A single H100 costs $50,000. A modest AI training cluster needs 500 to 1,000 of them. Do the math, that's $25 to $50 million just in hardware before you even turn it on. And you needed them now, not eventually. That scarcity plus that price plus that necessity created a perfect storm. Nvidia's revenue went through the roof. But here's what matters. This chokehold created an enormous problem. Big tech companies realized they were completely dependent on Nvidia's roadmap, Nvidia's supply chain, and Nvidia's willingness to keep selling to them. So what exactly is Jalapeño? It's not a finished consumer product you can buy tomorrow. It's OpenAI's custom AI accelerator. Think of it as a specialized computer chip designed from the ground up to do one thing incredibly well: run and train large language models. Nvidia's chips are incredibly powerful and incredibly flexible. They can do graphics, they can do machine learning, they can do almost anything. But that flexibility comes at a cost. Jalapeño is narrowly focused. It's built specifically for the math that powers ChatGPT and o1 and future OpenAI models. By cutting away everything that's not essential for that one job, you can make the chip faster, more power efficient, and cheaper to manufacture. Think of it like the difference between a Swiss Army knife and a specialized surgical scalpel. The Swiss Army knife does everything okay. The scalpel does one thing perfectly. This strategy isn't new. It's how Apple designs the M-series chips for MacBooks, how Tesla designs chips for autonomous driving, and how Amazon built chips for data center workloads. But in each case, the payoff was massive: better performance for less money. OpenAI's betting that the same strategy works for AI training. The real question isn't whether Jalapeño is technically feasible. It almost certainly is. The question is, can OpenAI build it at scale, integrate it into their infrastructure, and actually ship competitive performance before Nvidia ships their next generation? Here's the thing that makes Jalapeño immediately relevant. OpenAI isn't waiting for perfection. They're planning to integrate this chip into their operations starting next year. That means actual, real-world deployments of ChatGPT and o1 running partly on Jalapeño silicon rather than purely on Nvidia hardware. It's not an either-or situation. They'll run some of their workloads on Nvidia GPUs where those make sense, and some on Jalapeño where the chip excels. This phased rollout is clever because it lets them test the chip in production, find the problems, and fix them without betting the entire company on an unproven piece of hardware. Think of it like a pilot program at scale. For OpenAI, the benefits are huge. Every dollar they save on hardware costs is a dollar they can spend on research, better models, or improved infrastructure. If Jalapeno even cuts their hardware costs by 20%, that's hundreds of millions of dollars annually. But more importantly, and this is what keeps Nvidia up at night, OpenAI becomes less dependent on Nvidia's product roadmap. If Nvidia delays their next GPU by 6 months, OpenAI has a backup plan now. They're not at mercy anymore. This independence is worth more than any cost savings. So how does Jalapeno compare to Nvidia's latest hardware? The honest answer is, we don't know yet because the detailed specs haven't been released. OpenAI's kept things pretty quiet, but we can make some educated guesses based on what we know about the market. Nvidia's H100 is roughly 2 years old now, and Nvidia's already shipping the H200, which is about 50% faster. For Jalapeno to be a real alternative, it needs to match or exceed the H200's performance in the specific workloads that OpenAI cares about. Does it? Probably not across the board. Nvidia's invested decades into optimizing their architecture and has an enormous team of world-class engineers. OpenAI, even with serious resources, probably can't match that immediately. But Jalapeno might not need to. If it's 80% as fast as an H200 at half the price, that's already a massive win. And remember, Nvidia's locked into an annual release cycle. Jalapeno can iterate more quickly if needed. The economics also matter here. Nvidia charges premium prices because they can, there's no alternative. But if Jalapeno even threatens to take a meaningful slice of OpenAI's training workloads, that changes the entire power dynamic in hardware negotiations. Here's where this gets big. OpenAI isn't alone in this strategy. It's part of a larger change in how big tech thinks about hardware. Google's already using their own TPU chips instead of Nvidia GPUs for a lot of their machine learning work. Meta's been building custom silicon. Tesla's designing chips for autonomous driving. Amazon's invested in custom chips for AWS data centers. The pattern is clear. Every major player wants leverage. But OpenAI's Jalapeno is the most public statement yet. It's the loudest signal that the era of GPU-only hegemony is ending. This creates massive pressure on Nvidia, not because Jalapeno itself will destroy their business, it probably won't, not immediately, but because it breaks the narrative that there's no alternative. Once customers know an option exists, even if it's imperfect, the power dynamic changes fundamentally. Nvidia will have to compete more aggressively on price, on innovation, on roadmap commitments. They'll have to prove they're not taking customers for granted. For the broader AI industry, this is healthy. Competition drives down costs, accelerates innovation, and prevents any single company from holding too much power over the infrastructure everyone depends on. A thriving, competitive chip market is good for everyone, good for startups, good for researchers, good for end users who eventually benefit from cheaper, better AI services. So what does this mean for you? Well, if you use ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, the immediate impact is probably minimal. You'll keep using these services the same way, and they should keep getting better. But underneath the surface, things are shifting. As Jalapeno enters production, and as other companies launch their custom silicon, AI services will become cheaper and faster. Companies will have more flexibility to invest in better models rather than just throwing more hardware at the problem. You might see price drops eventually. You might see faster response times. Most importantly, you'll see innovation accelerate because the chokehold on the infrastructure is loosening. For developers and companies building AI products, this is even bigger. Right now, if you want to train or fine-tune a large model, you're essentially forced to use cloud providers with Nvidia GPUs. Jalapeno and chips like it give you alternatives. It gives smaller companies a chance to compete because they're not entirely at Nvidia's mercy on supply and pricing. It means the AI industry itself becomes more robust and less dependent on a single company's good faith. This is the kind of infrastructure competition that makes entire ecosystems healthier. It's the difference between a monopoly and a proper market. And markets drive innovation, lower costs, and broader access. So here's what this all comes down to. Jalapeno isn't just about OpenAI saving money on chips. It's a shot fired in a larger war over who controls the infrastructure of AI. For the first time, a major AI company is saying publicly, we're not entirely dependent on Nvidia anymore, and you shouldn't be either. That's powerful. That's dangerous for Nvidia's dominance. That's healthy for the entire industry. The next 5 years will show whether this actually works at scale. Will Jalapeño deliver the performance and reliability OpenAI needs? Can they manufacture it in volume? Can they integrate it into a system that rivals Nvidia's ecosystem? Those are open questions. But the fact that OpenAI is asking them out loud, and the fact that every other tech giant is watching and probably asking the same questions, that changes everything. We're moving from an era of hardware dictatorship to an era of hardware competition. And that's genuinely exciting because competition is how you get better products, better innovation, and real options. Watch this space closely over the next 18 months because the moves companies make right now will define who has power in AI for the decade to come. This story is far from over, it's just getting started. Follow for daily updates on how this unfolds.